The following recording is a conversation between Marjorie and Floss. Floss was christened Florence, and they are sisters, older and younger sisters, and they're talking about the old days when they were growing up.
His grandmother, my father's grandmother, I understand, it may not be true, that she was a niece of Sir Robert Peel, he was Prime Minister, yes.
Her name was Mary Peel. Her name was Mary Peel.
Oh, well, you know that better than I do. No, I was going to... I didn't know it was being recorded, but I'll tell you this because it's about mother, you see.
Yeah.
She said, yes, your father wanted to know about his antecedents, but as soon as he found out it was going to cost him something, he didn't do any more. Because he had to go to the parish registers and things like that, round in the St Helens district. And then you go to Somerset House, and I suppose it does get costly, so we don't know.
Well, when did they move from St Helens to Widnes?
Well, I don't know that exactly. His father came from St Helens to Widnes when his children were fairly small.
They're talking about the Morris side of the family. So this would be John Morris's father, who were all originally from St Helens.
Road to somebody called a firm that had a double name like they used to have in those days when two men got together, that's all I know. But that's what they came to Widnes for, and lived in Hale or Hale Bank, knew Hale Bank very well, and he went to that Catholic, we used to call it the convent school, with his elder sister. So they must have been quite small, because he said he went to school in skirts.
Was that Grandad?
No, my
father.
father.
That's right. Yeah.
My father was still wearing, as they did in those days, dresses, and he can remember then, so his children must have been quite small when he came then, so that's the only idea I can get about what date it was. But so the way where to go is to go to, I don't know which church it would be in St Helens.
Well, I wish...
but don't forget the Roman Catholics.
We've already been to the church.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, we've done that, but we couldn't get any further. All we found out was a cousin that was buried in the churchyard. There were no records at all, because we didn't...
and there was somebody who lived in a fairly big house. That was a much bigger house than we were. And I can remember going there. Now, whether they were a relative of Grandfather Morris or a friend, I don't know. And the name is gone. But there was a boy there who was lame playing with the Meccano in those days when I was a small child. Yeah. But I don't think that name would ever come back to me because I just feel it's not on the tip of my tongue. And it's a long time ago. I'd be quite a small child. I can remember going. I remember the house we lived in when he took me. There, and I know that it was bought before I was 5.
But they lived in Gladstone Street.
Oh yes, that was when. Oh well, I don't know when they lived there. But, it must have been afterwards.
They went
to Hale Bank first because these firms were along Ditton Road.
Yes.
That was where a lot of the firms were, like the high-speed steel alloy and those.
They lived in Gladstone Street.
Yes.
And that was when Grandma got into all that trouble with her next door neighbour.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And that's what was that?
This woman, it's a long story, but apparently she wasn't a very good manager, Grandma, Mother Morris, and she got involved with this woman who liked to drink from the outdoor.
Oh, never heard this.
Oh yes, and Grandad took all. My father told me this, and Grandad took all the housekeeping off her. So she had no money to spend. And Auntie Nellie, that's how Auntie Nellie came to be the boss of the house, because she was the eldest girl and it was given to her.
Well, I never knew that. That's absolutely new to me.
But she died when she was about 49.
Grandfather Morris was a very thrifty man. He himself.
Yes.
Now, I know that as a small child. Yes. And very... My mother liked him very much, and he liked my mother.
Yes.
When some story about when the 14 War started, she went to Liverpool with him too, and she told me something about walking along the ledge somewhere. They went to
see a submarine.
Oh, was it? That's it. Well, and then she said something about people throwing pianos through the window, something like that. I don't know what it was, the Germans, but you know,
The piano,
everybody became anti-German.
and there were German-made pianos.
There was a shop in Widnes, a Port Butcher. It was called Foster. Well, it was called
Pfister. He was. His name was Pfister.
Yes.
He changed it to Foster.
Yes, but they were always called Foster when I went to school. 'Cause
Yes.
I went to school with them, you see.
That's right.
And
Yes.
this Mr. Pfister, or
Yes,
Foster,
that's right.
married one of the salts from Holton View that mother knew.
Yes, that's right.
But Grandfather Morris was a very, as I've said, a thrifty man. So his wife was perhaps not just like that.
No,
But from what I know, the whole family seem to be thrifty. They don't waste money.
no.
So
We made this.
Jane Miller.
Was my mother's name,
Yes.
and she married again.
No, she didn't.
No.
Her mother.
Yes,
And then she was, well, I don't, she wouldn't change her name, but this Fletcher name comes in.
They are now going to talk about the Hunt side of the family. The first bit is a bit difficult to understand, but she's saying that my great-grandma, Jane Hunt, her name was Miller before she married into the Hunt family. So I hope you can keep track of this.
Was my mother's name,
Yes.
and she married again.
No, she didn't.
No.
Her mother.
Yes,
And then she was, well, I don't, she wouldn't change her name, but this Fletcher name comes into it. That's all I know, Marjorie.
Yes.
It's very vague.
Yes.
I think she might have been called Jane Fletcher.
No.
Like Peggy Fowlis was called Peggy Fowlis, and she was Peggy Ambrose, really, you know, her father. Her mother married.
That's right. Now, they came from. Before that, the Hunts. He built Bold Bridge.
That's right.
And now
He
that
came to build. That's what he came to Widnes for.
yes, from what's the name?
Kidsgrove.
Kidsgrove. I couldn't remember that.
I believe it was only small place.
Yeah,
then.
they came from Kidsgrove. So you see that anybody who traced back would have to go to Kidsgrove.
Yeah, but I believe it's a big town now.
Oh yes, that's right, in Staffordshire.
Mm.
But my mother used to tell me about going back there in a pony and trap.
Yes.
Now, you don't happen to remember what they never mentioned what grandfather's name was, her grandfather's name. My mother never mentioned what her grandfather's name was.
No.
You know, when she used to go to Kidsgrove.
A maternal grandfather.
Yeah, that was
If a
Fletcher,
mother
as you
married
said.
twice, it would be a mother's stepfather. you
Yes,
see.
that's right, so it would be Fletcher.
No, I'm talking, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
that's right. But I'm talking about the Hunts now. It's the Hunts who are interested.
you're on the Hunts.
Warren Hunt is interested, you see.
Who?
John Hunt's boy. Is
What's his name? Warren?
yes, his name's Warren Hunt. And he's
That's
done...
the next to Jonathan.
Yes, the one next to Jonathan. And he's interested. Now, I've written down all the names. Now, we've got to start with the eldest. Now, who was the eldest of my mother's
Are you
family?
talking about my grandma's family?
Yeah, no, my mother's family.
Yes.
My mother's family.
Mm.
Now, was
Our
Auntie
grandma's family, I think, was old Bill Hunter's, that was Aunt Betsy's husband, niece,
That's right.
but she wasn't...
But they got
they
the
only
money.
had one child, Alfred,
Yeah.
and when I passed the scholarship, he gave my mother a pound in those days to buy me a school bag.
Which was a lot of money.
It was 14 and 6, something
Yes,
like
the
that,
school
from
bag.
Boydell's, the best leather shop.
Yeah. So, well, this Alfred Hunter,
Alfred Hunter.
Maggie Hunter, he became an accountant,
Oh, I
and
know.
he's the one who was in lumber with Ken. The tittling stick fella.
Ken Dodd.
Ken Dodd.
No,
He
no,
was
no,
his
no.
accountant.
Diversity.
However, we are
No, I never
vessel.
heard that.
Now wait a minute, we're going through
I
the...
know Alfred Hunter was the only child of Aunt Betsy and her husband Hunter. She was a Hunter. She married a Hunter.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he was 5 years younger than she was, because he said to mother, he said, I'd never marry anybody that was older than me again, and I thought, oh, don't call 5 years. 5 years much, you know. I was only very young then.
Yes.
But he married again, a lady from Southport.
Oh.
So I don't know. Mother got no money from that. Yes, but she always said that Aunt Betsy had promised her what she had.
That's right.
Pub.
Yeah.
And let me think now. Have you turned it off?
No.
Turn it off, please. She had a will under the mantelpiece,
Yes.
and they think that when she died, it wasn't there. And they think Uncle Bill, because Mother was no blood relation to
Bill
Hunter.
No.
They think that so Maggie Hunter got the pub.
That's right. I know that Maggie Hunter got
He
them.
got it, you see.
Yeah.
So what they're talking about here is that Florrie Morris, my grandmother, Flossie and Marjorie's mother, had an aunt called Aunt Betsy, and she had quite a big pub called the Horns in Widnes, which was demolished to make way for a road. And this Aunt Betsy had promised Florrie Morris, if anything happened to her, the pub. And she died, and well, this will was supposed to be on the mantelpiece, but when she died, the will disappeared. And so, of course, the money then went out to the family and didn't go to Florrie Morris at all.
The other thing is...
She was his niece, old Hunter's niece, nothing to do with our bloodhound.
No, no. Now,
I don't know what happened to Alfred, but he was living with his mother, you know, at the time that I was a child, when I was 11.
yeah.
And I don't know really what happened to him at all. He was older than Mother.
Yeah.
Older than Mother, you see.
However, the thing is the names of the family. Who was the eldest in my mother's family?
Well, the eldest was Auntie Sissy,
Which was Elizabeth
Elizabeth Alice.
Alice,
And I think the next one was Auntie Polly.
Mary.
Mother.
Her name
Yes,
was
her name
Mary.
was Mary, but I couldn't really tell you.
No, that's right.
The other name. And the next one would be Auntie Mattie.
No, you're missing out Margaret, aren't you? And
Oh no,
Arthur.
she's at the bottom.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Oh, and
She died when she was 14.
oh, I thought she was about 21. I thought she was.
I thought she was 14 because no, I could be wrong. She became a teacher when she was 14.
That's right.
Because they could do in those days. The headmaster at St. Bede's wanted my father to become a teacher, and my grandfather Morris wouldn't let him. Wasn't enough money. It was very, very poor money. Besides, he was in the engineering. He had a certificate on the wall all about engineering. Grandfather Morris, and he put his 2 sons to engineering. My father to moulding and Uncle Jimmy to fitting.
That's right. Yes.
But that was on the Morris.
Yeah.
Oh, you want the mother's family?
Yes.
And we're down it.
We've got to Mary, then we got to Matilda Jane, Mattie.
Yes. Well, Arthur came somewhere there. But
Arthur.
I don't know where he came.
Yes. Well,
He was the eldest son.
yes. Now he was 22 when he died.
Well, I don't know, but Grandma used to tell me that they carried him shoulder high
Yes.
because he was in the volunteers.
He had the first military funeral in Widnes, my mother told me.
Yes, well, Grandma used to tell me, and I didn't know what she meant, you know. And I used to think everybody that got buried had the coffin on the shoulder, she said.
Yes.
But it was a typhoid epidemic,
That's right, yes.
and she lost, through the typhoid, her eldest son,
Yes,
Arthur,
that's
and her
right.
husband.
Yes, she lost 3 of them
In
in
10
6
days, she said.
Yes,
She used to tell me.
yes, Arthur and
only 2 of them that I know.
well, apparently Margaret died of it as well.
Oh,
My
did she?
mother said
Oh,
she
Mother
lost
told you.
3 in 6 months.
Yes, well,
2 in 10 days
Yes.
and 3 in 6
no,
months.
yes, I didn't know that bit.
Well, that's what
But
Mother
Margaret
told
was.
me.
Now, I might be a bit confused about her being 14, but she could be 40. She was a teacher, so she was
Yes.
already. So
That's right.
She
Well,
could have been
I
21.
understood she was 21 and he was
There were 2
22,
teachers.
something like
Auntie
that.
Gertie was a teacher.
Oh, I didn't know Auntie
Oh,
Gertie.
yes.
Now, where did Auntie Gertie come in this? And was hers just
Have you
Gertrude?
got to hers? No?
Yes, Gertrude was she.
I
She
don't
was.
know. I
That's
don't know Gertrude. I don't know the other
well,
name.
wait a minute, Auntie Gertie. She was.
Oh.
I didn't know she was a teacher.
Yes, oh, definitely.
Oh,
Yes, because I went there when they lived in Altrincham.
that's right.
And they had when she wasn't teaching. Leslie was about my age, you
Yes.
see, her eldest boy.
That's right.
Although she was older than mother.
Yes.
And they had a little business just opposite the school that I went to.
Yeah.
I went to school there.
Did you?
This
Yes.
is very interesting.
Yes.
I met a lady
Yes.
who comes from Altrincham, the first one I met in all my life.
Yes.
And she knows what I'm talking about.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
went to a little school with Leslie,
Yes.
and we used to go to the railings at playtime, and
Yeah.
she used to bring us a drink of milk and a condensed milk bottle,
Yes.
you see.
Yes.
But I don't think she was teaching then. Oh, Auntie Gertie was definitely a teacher.
Yes.
I don't think Margaret must have taught for very long if she died so young.
No, she probably
But if
didn't.
it was 21, she could have.
Well, she was the only one that I ever heard mother mentioned as
Well,
a
if
teacher.
she said she was 21,
Yeah.
I never knew how old.
Well, of course, birth and death certificates reveal how old
Oh,
she
yes,
is.
but we haven't
You
got
see,
them, have we?
no, but you get them.
Yeah.
You see, you do. It's easy to get them now because they're all on these films
But
now.
I mean, you may be right about her being in the older lot. I'm only going by her being young because she died young.
That's
so
right.
I don't know where she came.
Well, that's as far as
Well,
I
there
know.
was a Margaret, that's right. Then Uncle Bert and Walter came somewhere.
Well, actually, who came first was Walter.
Bert, definitely.
Oh, did he?
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
yes.
Uncle Bert was old enough.
Yes,
to go.
Bertie Binns.
Yes.
And then Walter.
Well, probably.
No, that's right. I
And
know
another
this.
father
I know
was-
about the four young ones. I know because it was Bertie Binns, Walter, my mother, and Hilda,
That's right.
and she was the youngest.
Yes.
And now the also who comes into this is our doll's mother.
Yes,
You see.
well-
Now I got the tale, and I don't know whether this is the correct tale, that our
Doll is short for Dorothy, and Dorothy Burgess was actually my mum and Flossie's cousin, but they were very close in age. So Doll was the daughter of Mary, nicknamed Polly, who owned the Millfield pub.
my grandmother got tired of the bakery business and she decided to go and move into this rented house in Belvire Road.
No.
Oh.
Before that, she went to Albert Road.
Oh, did she?
She lived number 8 branch of the,
Yes,
the
yes,
stores
yes,
was, and Pro's on the corner.
yes,
Do you remember
yes, I
Pro's?
do, yes,
Well, Grandma lived, I don't know what number,
yeah.
but there, you know, by the bottom of that,
Well, when
bit where
did,
that tall chimney
yes,
is.
when did Auntie Polly go in the
Into the
Millfield?
pub.
Because I understood that what happened was she took Auntie Hilda with her, but she put Auntie Polly and, was his name Harold? Her husband's Burgess.
No,
What was his name? Fred.
Fred
Fred, that
Fred.
suddenly came to me.
Burgess.
She put Fred Burgess and Auntie Polly in this pub, paid the money like they used to have to do to go in a pub, on the understanding that my mother went with her. And Auntie Polly kept mother, and she kept Auntie
that would be
Hilda.
right, she lived there.
That's
She
right.
lived with Auntie Polly.
And she was about 14 at the time.
Well, I
think.
don't know. Well, she would be because she was married when
She was married.
19.
She was married from there.
She was
I know.
married
I
when
know.
she was
I know
19.
she was married from
Yeah.
there.
And when she told Auntie Polly she was going to get married, Auntie Polly told her she was going to get married because she was a widow then,
Yes.
and she was marrying this
Harry Rice. Yes.
Well, this Harry Rice was a milkman. He wasn't a witness person, and he got this milk business, and he used to wear leather.
Those leather jerkins on his legs, not leather.
No, leather gaiters.
Yes, right up to his knees.
Yeah, and he had one of those moustaches that you sharp at the
Yeah,
end. You know,
waxed up.
Yes, and he had one daughter, Fanny.
Yes. Who got all her jewellery. Oh, I'll
no.
never got over it.
Well, when Uncle Fred, that was Fred Burgess, collapsed one morning early,
Yes.
and then Mother ran out for help, and she brought in Harry Rice.
Fred Burgess what, did you say?
Collapsed one
Collapsed,
morning.
yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My mother went out for help.
And she brought Harry Rice.
And this Harry Rice, the milkman, it was early morning,
Yes.
came in.
Yes.
And Fred Burgess died, you see. Don't you remember the bachelor Burgesses living opposite to us in Taylor Street? I don't you remember.
The bachelor. Well, I was telling
The
you.
bachelors.
Yeah, but didn't his sister live there?
Yes.
They used to call her Lizzie Bugdew, so I was
Yes.
telling Ross about it.
Absolutely.
I didn't know the bachelor. I thought that was the
There were
same
two.
Burgess.
There were
Yes.
two men
Yes.
and their sister,
Yeah.
you see,
Yeah.
living opposite her. Now, you couldn't have such a contrast, 6 kids on one side and me on the other.
Yeah.
And gable ends, see. So our gable end had a permanent set of wickets on it, see, in chalk. And we did bang, bang, bang. But when it went on to Lizzie Bugdew, so they used to call her, she used to come out straight away. Now, she was our doll's aunt,
That's right. Yes.
you see. She wasn't our aunt, but
That's
she was
right.
they were
Yes.
Fred Burgesses.
Yes. Yes.
See.
That's right.
And so that was an irrelevant bit.
Well, no, it's all interesting. It's all interesting. But so that's how Harry has.
Auntie
Yeah,
Lizzie,
Auntie
she used to
Lizzie.
call Lizzie
Yes,
Bugdew,
yes.
you see, because
Yes.
she was an Auntie Lizzie.
So that's how Harry Rice got his foot in the door.
Absolutely.
And then he ill-treated her, and she took to
Oh,
drink.
yeah. Now, as I, you know, to me, I could hear the adults talking, you know, and I used to hear this name over the door. Now, there's a name over the door of every pub, as you must have seen.
He gets the
Every
licence,
pub.
yes.
Well, Auntie Polly allowed him, after she married him, to put Harry Rice over the door. She should have kept it
Yes.
to Polly, Mary
Yeah.
Rice,
Yeah.
always, like they did in Manchester at the Grey Mare,
Yeah.
when Jessie,
Yes.
Rhoda's sister, married a fellow who was, he was acting
Yeah.
barman there. But he didn't go over the door, it says Jessie.
Yes.
It's Jessie, what name? I've forgotten his name now.
Well, this is why
So I used to hear that, them saying that, you know.
Yes.
Oh, the name over the door was
Yes.
a very important thing. Yes, it was Auntie Polly's pub, and he came in it.
Then he got control, you see, and it was all her money and well, it was Grandma's
She
money.
did
He'd
take,
put her there.
she did take to drink,
Yes, and then she's.
but I don't know how soon. But she left him 3 times and went back 3 times. And every time she went, she took Fred Burgess's sideboard with her.
Yes.
And
Did she go to Grandma's then?
And if I don't know. Once she went to Auntie Mattie because she took me with her.
Oh.
Auntie Mattie, her husband was
Tom Wheat.
Tom Wheat. It must have been the First World War then. And Tom Wheat was in Aldershot. That's the military place, isn't it?
Yes.
And Auntie Mattie went for a fortnight or something like that, or whatever it was, and took Reggie. She remember Reggie.
Yes. Yeah.
And she was the youngest of the 3, and she took Reggie with her, and Auntie Polly took me to Auntie Mattie's, and I stayed, you know,
Yes.
with them.
Yeah.
They were very, very close, the sisters.
And they're very close they were, yes. I always remember them as being
So I
very
went with
close.
Auntie Polly then, and another time I went with my grandma
Yeah.
to Auntie Gertis,
Yes.
and that was Altrincham.
Yes.
He was a printer, her husband.
Walter Williams.
Yes,
Yes.
Walter Williams, mother used to go, yeah.
Mm.
Distinguish him from
Yes, yes.
And so he walked along. There was a canal there. I've met a lady here, Ruth. Somebody. She's ever so nice. Not old, you know. And that's a good thing about here. You can mix with everybody. And she knew Altrincham. Somehow it came up. It was on the wall. She had a Sunday school class
Yes.
there. Or something. And I found out she was the only person I'd ever met who knew Altrincham, and we could talk like that.
Mm-hmm.
We walked along. She said, "I think it must have been Navigation Road that you lived in, from how you describe it." And we were walking along the canal bank with Leslie and me, you see, and Uncle Walter. I think it was Sunday night, and he found a caterpillar, one of those furry ones, and gave it to Leslie. Well, I wanted one. I can remember thinking, I want one. You know, well, like, I was that young.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how young I was. I think I was round about 5.
Yes.
I can prove that by something I'll tell you now. But, so I wanted one. So he got one for me. But he put Leslie's in the matchbox. And he put mine in the... and I was screaming at this thing. I remember that. Now, I know that I was in Warrington Road Infants. And I think things had got a bit too much for my mother. I think my father was ill or something.
Yeah.
So my grandma brought me to Auntie Gertie's and left me there
Yeah.
while I lived with them a bit and went to school across the road.
Yes.
I learned my first hymn there. It was Plough the Fields and Scatter. So you'd be able to know how how old I was.
Yes.
I'd be 5 in the December. I wasn't quite 5.
Oh, yes, yes.
You see,
Yeah.
and we used to go across to school. You see.
Yes.
So I met this girl and I said, she showed me some pictures in it. She said, I bet it was Navigation Road you lived in.
Yeah.
Because you see, many years passed by when I was only 11 and I used to go to Gordon's and they had a car in those days.
Yes.
And they were always going round and round. And when we got near Altrincham, live in Altrincham and not far, I was always looking where I was all those years ago when I was 5, you see.
Yes.
Besides, my grandma came back for me. She said they were going to cross my name off on the register at school and they shouldn't have let me hear it, you see, because I'd been away so long from Warrington Road Infants.
Yes.
With being in Altrincham, I was going to school.
Yes.
But if I didn't go back, and I thought, oh, cross my name off. Oh, did you shouldn't do. You shouldn't let it is a shame.
You shouldn't let children know. But some children are quite sensitive about those things, and others aren't. You see,
cross my name off, and you know, I don't think I ever went back, because when I got back, we'd moved then to Taylor Street. Maybe that was what I was doing there. She'd be expecting another baby, my mother.
Yes.
Harold.
Yeah.
You see.
That's right.
And I was. They got rid of me to my grandma took me. And
Where did you
anyway,
live before Taylor Street then?
Christie
before
Street.
Taylor Street, we lived in Christie Street, which was near Halton View.
Yeah.
Everywhere where my grandma went, we went. My
Yes.
grandma lived in.
She lived in
Warrington
Road.
Road. She had a shop and bakery.
That's right.
When she was left a widow, she bought this, and there's some tale about her going and paying the street bill.
Yes, plunking it down on the counter.
Yes.
She got
And
the
my mother
street
lived
bill.
just behind. It's a big gable end to my grandma's shop, and then a pub there.
And she lived
And they
just,
had a house just behind, so the back gate came to the back gates.
they all stayed close.
And I've got only one memory of that, because I would be 3, and we had to do our earliest memory when I was in college, and that was the one I could think of. My earliest one. Must have been about 3, and I was standing in the back door. And ever hear my mother talk about Edie Tipping?
Yeah, I knew he'd be tipping well. Sid and I, they used to go out on a Saturday night. They used to go out on a Saturday night to the market, and they'd say, my Aunt Hilda would say, oh, we see Edie tipping. And Sid used to say to me, oh, if we see Edie tipping, don't tell them you've seen Edie tipping, because as soon as they saw this Edie tipping, they stopped to talk, and we 2 kids were fed up with her, you see.
I can't remember Grandma's shop.
Oh, terrible.
I know it went past it, you see, years and years later, often. Every time you went to Warrington...
Well, it's still there. It's the hairdressers now.
Is it? Yes. Well, that was hers.
Yeah.
And then there was the Castle Hotel, and the one about my mother tells about that, you know, about anybody drinking. You know, she said, dreaded it. She didn't want a pub, you know. She
No.
She said, hey, so-and-so from the castle, you know. You can see my mother saying it.
Fred Valentine.
Hold his head under the tap of the whiskey barrel and let him drop into his mouth.
Fred Valentine was always
He
after
got
a
that keen on whiskey.
Yeah.
You must tell us your earliest memory.
Yes, I'm going to tell you.
yes.
Well, my earliest memory was in the back. It's a memory, a real thing that happened. You know, not a dream, but a memory. Standing in the gate of that house that was the back of Grandma's, but the first house I remember. I wasn't born in that. I was born near Auntie Polly's pub in Ray Street. That's where I was born.
Oh, that's right, Ray Street they were. Yes. She stayed near Auntie Polly first of all. That's right. I remember her telling me she went to Ray.
Millfield.
That's
Have you
right.
seen the Millfield?
Every time
Yes,
it was,
I know where the Millfield
Well,
is.
the Millfield was there, and the
I know
street.
where Ray Street is.
yes,
yeah.
Oh,
that's
well,
right.
it's Ray
Yes,
Street.
yes.
R-E-A-Y.
That's
well,
right,
I've no
it's still
memory
there,
of that
yes.
at all, you see. But I've only been told about that I lived there, and that was my address on my birth certificate or whatever.
Every time there were these new houses built, they moved, practically.
Well, were those new?
Well, they were new, Ray Street. Then Christie Street was built. And
Was
then,
it new?
I think so.
I know Taylor Street was
Yes,
new.
yes, well, I think so.
I know that,
As far
because
as I remember, that's
I
what
was
she told
5
me.
when
Yes.
we went.
Yes.
So I'd lived in 2 then. Well, it's what's my earliest memory, I
Yeah.
have to tell you. I was standing in the gate of this house in, what was Castle Street.
Yes, Castle Street.
Because the Castle Hotel,
Yes,
Castle Street at the back of Grandma's, at the top of Warrington
that's
Road.
right.
Yeah.
I was standing there when a young boy, appeared with a mask on. Like he was, I suppose, playing.
Yes.
And I was terrified, that's why I remember it. The instinct of fear has caused that to be imprinted in my mind, as we learned at college, you see. And I knew, you'll laugh at this, I knew who he was. He was Duddy Tippin. Now this Tippin, yeah. And I remember saying, Duddy Tippin, Duddy Tippin. You see, because I couldn't speak properly,
Yeah.
but it's there. And yet I knew that it was this boy with this mask. And it's very interesting from a psychological point of
Of
view.
course,
That's
yes.
That's why we had to do it. Put down your earliest memory. I was only 18 then. But, I mean, whether I'd have remembered it today from then, if I hadn't, I don't know. But it's clear. It's as clear as yesterday. Of course, that's all what old folk are always like. It's clearer than yesterday. And but the interesting thing is, she wasn't Mrs. Tippin at all. This woman. It was her maiden name they called her by, like they do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
where people would call me Flossie Morris
That's
all the
right,
time.
yes.
Edie Tippin.
Yeah.
But her name, I'll tell you who she was. Her name was Burgess.
That's right.
She married the Burgess family you've heard my mother talk about
Yes.
many a time. Harriet Burgess and God knows how many of them.
That's
But
right.
remember Charlie Burgess? He's
Yeah. And
well, wasn't he her son?
Yes, and they eventually had the caretaking of the ICI record witness in that
That's
red house.
That's right. Exactly.
That's right.
But this one, there was only Edie Tippin to them. But you see, me being a little child, it was really quite pathetic because I could only have been 3. They called her Edie Tippin, and his name was George, I think.
Yes.
Georgie.
Yes.
Well, I couldn't say George when I was
Yes.
young, so I called him Duddy.
Yeah.
And I remember it's Duddy Tippin, you know. That's my earliest memory.
Well, I have quite a few memories of Taylor Street, and one of them that I remember very clearly is sitting in that window that looked
I saw everything
going
in that
down
window.
not the front one,
Oh.
the one where the kids used to go out the back way. They used to go the back way to school,
Yeah.
and
The
I
back
never
bedroom
wanted.
window.
No, the kitchen window,
Oh,
the kitchen
there.
window there. And sitting at a window and saying, "Our kid gonna cool this afternoon."
Yeah, and
And
they
they
wrote
used
it
to-
out, didn't they?
And then they used to make fun of me ever after, you know.
I used
sort
to
of
call
thing.
them our, I call them our kids, you know.
That's right.
I always call them our
And
kids.
then it was there that I can remember that they had this high mantelpiece with a plush red
yes.
plush fringe on
Yes,
with
yes.
bubbles on it, and
What's coming now? Did
One-
they come down?
no, one day, my mother, I sort of went climbing up like you said. Yeah, how
Oh,
they
yes,
do
up
when
that cupboard at the top.
my mother was out. No, I climbed up to the mantelpiece to see what was on it. It intrigued me, what was on this
Yeah.
So
high
high.
mantelpiece. And there was a halfpenny on it. And I knew it was a halfpenny, and I thought, oh, I found a halfpenny there.
Yeah.
Of course, the halfpenny was just as valuable in those days, you see. And I must have pocketed it. I was too young to go to shops or anything. However, my mother came in and said to my father, "Where's this halfpenny? You know, I left some money on this
She'd have put
mantelpiece.
it there for some
You
little
see.
thing,
Yeah.
you see.
I've left, you see." And my father said, "Well, I haven't seen it." Now, I don't know where all these were at the time, but I was there listening to this. And I knew I shouldn't have taken this halfpenny. And in the end, you see, I said, "Oh, well, you know, it was me who took this halfpenny." So then I got this big lecture about you shouldn't take things that don't belong to you, etc.,
Well, they'd be
etc.
afraid,
And I
you see.
can't tell you in detail, but I know they were quite upset because I'd taken this halfpenny and put it somewhere, you see. So, after this discussion, because I don't know what the time of night was, but my mother was obviously going somewhere, it was light, and we had this big bank we used to cross to the
Oh, the
North
bank,
Field.
yes, the bank.
And my mother must have said, "I'm just going across the bank," and she puts the coat on and goes out. And I said, "Oh, don't go, Mama, don't go." I thought I was positive she was leaving me, and my father compounded this because she just said, "Oh, I'll be back," and went. And I said to my father, "Oh, don't let her go, Dad, or I don't want my mama to go. Where's my mama going?" And he says, "Oh, she's going off with the black
Man, he often used to
And
say
he used
that.
to always say, "Oh, she's going off with
Yeah.
the black man." And I said, "Oh, I don't want her to go with the black man. I don't want to go." And I can remember getting hold of his leg, you know,
Yeah.
and saying this to him. And he just laughed. And of course she came back. But I can remember that clearly. And then I can remember another
That's
time
because
quite
of the
clearly.
emotion that
That's
it goes with it. That makes
it's the
it.
fear. Because
Yes,
I'm
the
going to
fear.
tell you another
Well, it's the
example.
first and strongest instinct of the lot.
Oh.
Fear. If you had no fear, you jump out of any window and blah. It's a very important.
Our bill went in the drill display. I won't tell you the whole tale of the drill display, but they used to stand on these low forms to see. Well, nothing as organised as it is today. It went to Norton Park after that. But this was that one in Dundalk Road. I don't know what it was called. It was Gossage's Wreck. It was then.
It belonged to the education in Dundalk Lane.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does now, but it was
Fields.
it was Gossage's Wreck, wasn't it? However, it doesn't matter because there was nothing organised. There were these few forms, and people stood around and watched. You see, but our doll and my mother and our Hildred got this form, and they stood on it, and we kids were with them. And the first aiders in those days used to have these big black bell tents. If anybody got hurt, they took you into one of these, carried you on a stretcher. And my mother, they all suddenly saw something exciting, and they all got off. And my mother got ticked up, and she fell, and she was concussed, and she lay there. And of course, our doll and me, and Hilda, they got this first aid fellow, and I was tugging at our doll in the same way, and I was saying, is my mama dead? Is my mama dead? And of course they take no notice of you because you were just a little child. And they carried her to this tent.
I never knew of that.
You see, and they said, you wait outside. These you children, you see. I think Sid Beach should be there because he was always having an eye outside. You see, these two youngest girls. And all I was saying is, I can remember, is my mama dead? And she was concussed, but it was very, very frightening. And those two, just like you said, with the fear.
Is that what you called them, Mama?
Mama. I used to
we
call
always
her.
called them Mama.
Yes.
Mama.
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 Mama and Dada.
N-A-N-A.
I won't tell you.
Yes.
I've only found one family
Mama
who
and
do
Dada.
that. And still do it. And when they were married did it, but we dropped it as we grew older. And that's
We used to call her mother afterwards.
And that's the Wentworths.
Oh, yes.
But it was always, and then the Wentworth after she was married, it used to sound queer.
Yeah.
It was Mama.
We always call them Mama.
No.
Mama and Dada.
And Dada. Always.
And when we got older, we used to call them Mother and Father.
Yes, because it sounded silly.
It's like
But-
Mummy, isn't it?
Yes,
Yes,
that's
it's like
right.
Mummy, but no.
We used to call my father Dada years after
Yes,
because
yes.
we called them, for the children, we used to say Nana and Dada.
Yes,
So
yes.
my father went back to being
Mama.
Dada. Yes.
Yes.
We always
But,
called her Mama.
Yes, always Mama. But I must tell you mine about the Halfpenny that you've told yours, because
Yes.
it's just as plain.
Yeah.
Mine was when we lived in Christie Street. So we left Christie Street when I was about 5. We went to Taylor Street when I was 5. I knew I was 5. And I knew I'd gone when I went to Auntie Gertie's. That I was in the infants, you see. I could tell you tales about those and they last forever. Well, I went in one day and I must have done exactly as you did. I saw a halfpenny and I bought some sweets with it.
Yes. You went one step further.
Well, I did. And I know what they were. You know those humbugs we used to call light paradise? Do you? They were yellow ones with white stripes in. And in those days, now there were stops at the end of the street. This was in Halton View, before we left Halton View. Because I wasn't 5, couldn't have been 5. I don't know when I started school. I went when I was 4 to Wallington Road, you see. Well, I had these sweets and I met 2 girls that you may not know. One was called Hilda Moseley, Tommy Moseley's
know
sister.
Hilda.
And they were older than I did, because when we grew up, I know I was only 10 and 11 and they were 14. And they were leaving school. And one was called May Sparks. Do you remember them? The Sparks?
Yes.
You know Jackie
yes.
Sparks?
Yes.
Well, I got these toffees and I had a great bag of toffees for a halfpenny. Well, you know, like that.
It was lots of money.
And I think I
had
must have,
farthings, you see, as
I think
well
I
in
must
those
have had
days.
one for myself, but I gave one to me. I gave one to Hilda.
Yeah.
Well, it was Hilda Mosedale.
Hilda Mosedale.
Yes, she's Tommy Mosedale's elder sister.
That's right, yes.
Tommy was about my age. And then we were all having tea at home. My father had come home from work and I'm having my tea, you see. So don't want to be, Hilda, she'd be born, she'd hardly be born.
That's right.
With a baby. And now Bill.
3 of them.
And a knock came to the door. And Hilda Mosedale And she said, isn't it funny I can tell a tale like this? I hope I'm not boring you. And she said, can May, as clear as it, can May have one of your toffees? You see, she said, I'd give her a toffee. And they were older girl, no, they weren't old, perhaps 7 or 8, but I was only 4. And I went back into where we were having our tea, and I said, can May have one of the toffees?
Innocent.
Yes, innocent. Because I'd put them somewhere. I don't remember, I knew I'd put them, and I'd put them and planted them or something, because I had a feeling that it wasn't right, you know. A kid of that age doesn't really know her own kids. Like Mrs. Kelso said when Julie pinched, she had a horse and she pinched the next door horse as well, that thing on wings, you know. Oh, I'm like this, you're taking other people's things. I said, Mrs. Kelso, a child of 2, doesn't know what's her own. But anyway, I knew I had a funny feeling about this. But I was daft enough to go in and say, can they have one of my toffees, you see? My mother said, I wondered where that halfpenny had gone that I was left from my rent. I'm sure she said rent. See, in those days it could be
It
could be 2 and 7 halfpenny.
And they had farthings,
And
you see, as
she
well.
must have hadn't got a halfpenny, you see. She'd perhaps given him 2 and 8 or whatever, and the halfpenny was on the table. That's right. I think I could only just see it when I pinched it. But I don't remember getting into any trouble. But I do remember that. Now that's a kid for you, you see. Now another one, I must tell you this before I'm telling you. Auntie Gertie had a maid. Is it all in there? Oh my God.
Go on.
Auntie Gertie had a maid, and her name was Nancy Helsby. I don't know whether you know anything about Helsby. With having this shop that I told you about in Altrincham. And I think maybe she was going out doing a bit of teaching, I don't know, but she was a teacher, Auntie Gertie. And she had this Nancy Helsby was her maid, you see. And so after, it must have been this particular time, I tell you, because I can't remember going once, that my grandma had brought me back from Auntie Gertie's, you see. And I had a letter from Auntie Gertie, they gave me all sorts to do. I was dog's body for years, but you know what. I've taken more reads for the licensed victuallers. When all Rice was the treasurer or something, they were all dying off, and I had to go. I was at the grammar school then, and it seemed to me I'd be going to Rokon before school with the blooming Rita, you know. I don't know. So anyway, to go back to this tale, so I had to take this note, this letter to Mrs. Helsby. Now, whether it was something to do with Nancy, you know, I think it was from Nancy. It could have been from the maid. And I think it was from Nancy to her mother, a young girl working for my auntie Gertie. And Mrs. Helsby was a very nice lady, I think. And she says, well, now that is lovely for you to bring me this letter. She says, you're my little postman. I thought, I'm not a postman. I was surprised. You're my little... Oh, I thought, that's fine. And she gave me a penny or a halfpenny, you see.
Yes.
Well, what did I do with this again? But I went to Auntie Tay's and I bought chocolate chewing nuts or something. Then a bag of chocolate chewing nuts. But at the same time I thought, she's made a mistake, I'm not a postman. You know. So this time we were awful lot with Grandma, you know. Grandma often had our Bill and me, you know. We used to fight like cat and dogs and things like that. But there'd be another baby coming or something like that. Mother was having them, wasn't she, every 2 years and something.
She had, oh yes, easily.
Well, you see, so we were at Grandma's. So I had this bag of chocolate chewing nuts that I thought I shouldn't really have, and nobody must know. Poor old Mrs. Helsby. I'd taken them on false pretenses. She thought I was a postman, you see. Yeah. And so every time I wanted one, I got behind the chair. You see things like... What happens, but Willie's watching me. Yes. You see, and he wants a toffee. Yeah. And so he splits on me to Grandma. He says, you won't give me any of the toffees. Now, I don't remember anything else. I don't remember getting into a round. No, that's right. I didn't get into any round. Up to that point, but you see, you're that daft when you're a kid. Yeah. First of all, with the halfpenny I stole, I had to say, I never forget, can May have one of my toffees, Fancy? Her mother said straight away, I wondered where that Hackney had gone.
My mother
I
had
don't get into any trouble, really.
my mother had 5 children in 8 years. That's
She
what
really?
had, yeah.
But my grandma, now this is funny, and I'll shut up after this, but Auntie Polly had this pub. Well, you know where it is. Now, if you go down that street that's called Joseph Street, we can see that from our corner window, can't we? Because you went to a wedding once when you were a kid and watched somebody who was to end this. My mother said, she was telling this tale about seeing this girl get married, and her mother said she was nearly dropping it. Somebody, I don't know who they were.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you about this long street, Auntie Polly's was at the top. Yeah. It was the real Innes, that's the pub next door place, you know, because it was right on the end. Well, there was something to do with Auntie Polly having that pub, and somebody they knew was the boss of the breweries, not the boss, the traveller. And his name was Fred Valentine. You must have heard
yes,
his name.
that's right.
But it was Fred Valentine who saw that they got the pub, and there was some. But
He was
you
the
said
agent.
you said something about. Yeah, that's right. My mother had to go and live with her, and something
That's
you
right.
said, and also the tale I know, it may not be true, that my grandma had to have a pint of beer every night.
I can believe
Something
that
like
because it was Grandma who put the money up for them to go in the
Well,
pub.
anyway.
I know that definitely.
Our Bill and I would be about that high.
Yeah.
And I think somebody was walking along with us. It wasn't, I don't think it was Grandma, it could have been. Down that entry that we call it. You know, if you continue down Joseph Street and you come to Albert Road, where
Yeah.
Grandma lived, where that stores is. And we were walking along. And our Bill, he's a tiny tot of some kind. I think we were 5 or 6 or something like that would be. I don't know. If she'd moved, we must have gone to Taylor Street then. I don't know. And we're walking down, and of course it's very narrow. Well, our Bill once got lost in New Brighton because he wouldn't let anybody hold his hands. You know that? He took him to New Brighton for a day, and he wouldn't hold Granny's hand, so we lost him. And the next time we saw him, a policeman had him. Well, so but he'd insisted on carrying this jug of beer. It was a jug, you see. And so he was carrying Grandma's jug of beer on one side of this adult, don't know which one it was, and I was on the other, you see. And of course he was up against this wall. Well, what does he do? But catches the jug on the wall, and out comes the beer. As far as I know, the bottom fell out of the jug, because it looked like that. And his words were, and this is why I remember it, his words were, our Shoshy did it. Shoshy used to come in, couldn't say it, our Shosh, now how the hell could it be me? When he was on that side and I was on this side. Well, that's why I remember that. You see, something makes you remember. I was so outraged. I thought it was such a terrible decision that I'd done it. And that's what we were like, you see, our Bill and all.
Well, I've been reading a lovely
So
book.
we could go on forever.
What was your grandmother like?
Oh,
Was she Victorian?
I was once
grandmother
walking.
type,
I was
or-
once walking down the street as a little girl, somewhere or other, and I was saying to myself, "I'm the most unhappy child in the world," because my grandma was picking at me because I wanted to read all the time at meals like this. That's not going, is it? You know, I'd be at a meal and I'd be like this, you see, and my grandma would pick. Well, my mother and father didn't pick at me because they hadn't time. I think my mother would come.
No, he picked on me instead at one time.
Oh,
I used to get into trouble for reading behind the table.
You know what he used to do on a Sunday morning? He used to sit with the newspaper up like that, doing nothing, my father. And every time he'd be picking as soon as picking at anything that was straight to hate him, you know. I didn't really hate him. But
Well, you thought you did.
Oh, yeah.
You've digressed from
And he
Granny
used to-
Hunt. We want to know, Ross wants to know what she was like. Was she tall?
Oh, that's what it, well, I
or
was trying
she
to get
steady?
young people. And she seemed to know the man at the pictures. And we were both going. And she'd say, oh, he's found it, Mr. So-and-so's found us a nice warm seat. So I'd be there with Grandma. Well, of course, it was silent pictures, and everything used to be up on the screen, you see. And so I had to read it to Grandma. And I remember one night, it dawned on me, somebody there said, I wish this child would shut up. That was me reading it to Grandma. And I remember another night that it was a doctor was attending a lady who was ill, you see. And she was, before the doctor came, she was doing herself up and looking in the mirror. And I remember that, you see. But I remember then the words that came on the screen. The doctor said, isn't this strange? The doctor was saying, back then, there it was written, you no longer require any more medical attendance. Now what does that mean? It means what I didn't understand. This woman was pretending to ill, and the doctor came to see her, you see. And the whole place clapped. Well, I hadn't a clue, because, you know. But I think that, I don't think that's very funny. After that, you know, when I was, when I first went to Manchester when I was 10, I'd be. But I was always at the pictures with them, I was a lucky daddy. Or the theatre. When they used to have a night out, you know, from the Grey Mare, they used to take me with them. I was a lucky, I was really lucky. But Rhoda used to say, she said, when I come to the picture, she said, all my troubles go. Used to be lovely and quiet. You know, sometimes I put the television on and use the subtitles. It's lovely. One reason I do it is it gets rather late here at night. You don't want to disturb anybody. And if you notice, quite a lot of the late ones now have got subtitles. And if they haven't, I watch them, and it's great fun to watch these gyrating people. Oh, there's some rubbish on there, going all over the place like this. Of course, they're singing, but they're doing it in the silence when I'm looking at them. It's just fun. But they were quite well off, and Violet used to come.
Oh, did she?
Violet Hancock. And, you know, when Violet came, we got to the house, and she was very nice, a young lady like my mother.
Yes.
You see.
Yeah.
I don't know who she's talking about now, talking about the Hancocks. There must have been some distant relative that lived Manchester way. But when she was a young child, she seemed to spend a lot of time there.
Well, I mean, you know, my mum's always saying, your grandmother was a lady. How
she
did
was.
you find, what was the definition of a lady?
Oh, well, your mother...
What was the definition of a lady?
Well, that's right, there's no hard and fast definition. Well, she wouldn't say that, she never said that.
You could bring the microphone.
My mother had no snobbery in her at all, whatever. I remember, you know, Flossie James, you remember? Oh, Flossie's dead, isn't she, years ago?
Yes.
And Jim?
Yes.
Well, my mother used to say, you see, my father and Tommy James were young men together. And my father, you know, would say, Tommy James is the nicest little fellow. You know, that's how I used to talk about him and thought a lot about. Well, so they were parallel ages as well. Now, Mrs. James, you ever know Mrs. James, you did, didn't you? My father once told her, he said, you mean Railway Alice, because there's a call. Well, they had Louis, so they must have been married, because Louis was old. Then they had Flossie, who was my age. I was December, she was March, you see. Now, my mother said to me, they only called her Flossie, copying off my mother. My mother called me Flossie because she was Florrie, you see. Because Florrie was a name in those days, so I was never anything else. That's what I say. If I ask anybody to call me a name, I'm never called by the name I was christened, which was Florence, once or twice at the grammar school. That's what I was in the registers, you see. You see, I've forgotten that you knew about Margaret from that holiday, but I always did it with Dan, I said, Well, I was going to...
We were on about the definition of what
lady.
you call a lady.
She
right.
went to a private school.
I'm very glad to have you, because I go off a tangent, you see. I don't know that there was any definite definition. I'm sure there wasn't. I don't know where Marjorie gets it from, because...
Well, they went to a private school.
Well, they went
That doesn't make you a lady,
There were only ragged schools in those
Yes,
days.
but...
They had the ragged schools and the schools you could play
Now, 1870 is the date of the council schools.
Yeah.
That was when Sims Cross was built, I believe. Then that was when the bill must have gone through about the council schools, that everybody had to be educated.
Yeah.
But before that, everybody that was going to be educated at all, first of all, it started in the porches of churches, you know that, don't you?
Yeah.
And a few children would be, you'll see benches on either side.
Right.
And only, as you say, only the rich people were able to be taught, and they'd be taught by monks or something, or some private tutors or something like that. So it wasn't that if they didn't go, if they were born at a certain date, well, they couldn't go to a board school, as they call them, the school board, because they weren't there. We were a bit later on. I mean, I was born in 1907, December 9th, but the board schools had been going a bit, and that was why we called the chap the school board man.
That's right.
Now,
Mama Mag went to a board
his real name was an attendance officer. Well, if she went to a board school, she must have been a school age after the 1870.
But when was my grandmother born?
And I was thinking the other night when she...
1887, I think. My father was definitely born 1884, I always know his.
Yes.
But the fact is that my mother told me that they went to this private school, and the difference was that they were taught to do all the things
That a wife would need.
That a wife would
because
need.
a woman only had one
That's
occupation.
right,
And as therefore, when Billy Carter's daughter went to Lowther College, and she got a certificate for cookery, and this is in our time, Billy Carter was as mad as hell. He says she doesn't go there for cookery, but you see it was still going on in to make you into a housewife was the idea.
And
so Mother went.
And they were taught all the housewifely things, and also that's where she learnt to play the piano, and that's where Auntie Hilda learnt to play the violin.
Well, I didn't know that. I thought Auntie Sissy took them all the piano.
Oh,
but
well, where did she learn it from?
I don't know. But Auntie says she was 20 years older than Mother.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, were they rich or anything?
Oh, according to the
No, I don't think so. But my grandma she must have been rich enough to build that house when her husband died.
What, the bakery?
Yes.
Yes.
And pay the street bill. But whether she had it all...
She built that then, did she?
Yes.
Yes. The rest were ended on afterwards.
Yes,
It was on the corner by
was built.
itself.
And I don't think that the Horns Hotel, I don't know whether that was once a free house, but they went new into that. It was very posh. Because you can see a piece at the side of that that's black brick.
Well, it's been pulled
They've
down.
knocked
Has it
it
gone?
down.
Well, that used to be the club room.
Yes.
Well, it wasn't knocked down when one of my kids at school took my picture.
It's only been knocked down this last year.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the Queen came to witness, and we were allocated to stand outside the Horns. And he's taken one of me just getting off the bus, one of my kids at school, and I had it for some time, and I don't know where it is now. And this is on it, and I know that it was the club room of the Horns because they kept that bit.
Yeah.
So they
Now-
weren't rich, but they were comfortable.
Well, if you're talking about my grandma's family, the Hunt family, the reason they're in witness was that ancestor came to build the bridge. And he built that house, Mill House,
Mill House.
at the end of Mill Lane, and Uncle Walter used to have a picture of
Yes, it was up for sale not long ago.
Was it? That was painted by one of his aunts,
Yeah.
painted with a pond in front. So they weren't sort of destitute people, because the tale they tell about that grandfather was, you might understand this, they say, what is your bond?
And he didn't need one.
And he said, no, the tale goes, he put the money on the table. They
Yes.
said to grandfather, what is your bond? And he put the money on the table. That's the tale they
Yes,
tell.
that's right.
So that they
You
weren't
didn't need a
destitute.
bond.
No, but they weren't. And as for my mother being a lady, my father always used to call her a lady, but she knew us better. She knew a lot more expressions than, you know.
Well, I think life had done that.
I could ride bare ass
Yes.
to London on
But
desire.
I think that
My
life
father had none of those.
I think life had
But
done
she
that to
lived
her.
like a sort of country pub sort of. And don't you remember, she used to say,
It took me home.
I took me hook, and for years, you know this tale, don't you? For years I thought she meant that she grabbed her coat and the hook came with it. Until Dan took a film of Eddie Hogg and those fishing up in the upper reaches of the Loon, and it's Salkeld, you know, near Appleby. You see, and we were watching this film at Eddie Hogg's, and Eddie was a skilled fisher, and he was throwing his line and also. And then we saw this fish, and Eddie says, oh, that one took its hook. And after all those years, I knew where Mother had got that expression from. She'd lots of country expressions. No, this that Marjorie tells you about her going to a private school, I think they had to go somewhere. Now, all I know about that is there was a farm near them that you must have heard about on the way to Warrington. And in those days it was called Hume's Farm. And she went to Miss Hume's school,
That's right.
you see. And there they learnt to sew a fine seam. And
Yeah.
But she also went to Wallington Road.
Oh, did she?
Oh, yes. And that's perfect. She did. Because when I went to Wallington Road, Miss Butterworth knew me, and this will interest you. When I went to college, and I'd just got to college, they used to put the letters in the morning, chuck them all out, you know. The head girl used to say, I'd be Morris. Morris so-and-so, you know, chuck them out. Well, one letter was not claimed this particular time of day, I think it was, so it was left on the hall table. And it said on this letter, Miss F. Hunt. Now this is very interesting for you. Miss F. Hunt. And it was left and nobody took any notice. And well, balmy me, I went one day and looked at it. And I thought, that looks like Miss Butterworth's writing to me. And it suddenly dawned on me, thick skull. I think it must be for me. I'd been there a few days on the whole. So I picked it up and it was. And she was calling me. My mother's name.
Yes.
That's how well she knew her. Now, she also lived in Halton View. Her mother used to do little messages for her, but she also attended Warrington Road School at one time. She didn't always go to Miss Hume's, but I don't know at what juncture that she went.
What did her father do for a living then?
Well, I'll tell you, it doesn't sound very great. Her own father, that was the son of this fellow that had come to witness. Well, I don't know which man told me, said he was a lumper. Now, you can look that up because I don't know anything about it. And it meant that he was the man that got a gang or a group together to do a certain job.
Like a foreman then?
Yeah.
That's something like that. And he died in that typhoid epidemic. So I don't know whether it was one of my uncles or... I couldn't tell you who told me that, but it just comes back
Well,
to
the
me.
man who built the bridge was his grandfather.
No, it was my mother's...
No, it wasn't my father's father.
No, not your father. It was on your mother's side.
Yes, but my Uncle Wal used to tell us that it was our great-great-grandfather.
Well, I always thought that he was the
built it.
father. That's how he came to witness.
No.
Well, it can't have been.
Well,
it must have
it
been
easily
because the
found-
railways only started in...
1834.
Well, yeah, but they wouldn't have started building...
Well, you could easily find that out. If
It
you
would be
looked up
about-
Old Bridge,
Oh,
you'd
yes,
find.
you would,
It
yes,
could be
yeah.
about the
I always thought-
1840s,
Yeah, and you've only
you
got,
see.
well, you've only
But
got...
if it's the 1840s,
Yes, but
it
a
won't have been-
generation is only 20 years.
Yes, but
But if she started having children 20 years before me now, so that's 1860. If she started having children in 1860,
And then a generation
Grandma.
before
and the
that.
bridge was only built in 1840,
Well, that's it, that's
It
what...
must have
Well,
been
if
his
Auntie
father.
Sissy was 20 years older than Mother, when would she be born? My mother, if you said
She
she
was
was
born 1867.
67. Well, 1867, before there were any board schools. I don't know when Auntie Sissy would be educated,
No.
but she was educated.
She was educated, yes. But you see, why I say, why I've always told them that, because they did speak well, all of them. They didn't speak, you
did they
couldn't
have the
just-
witness
You
accent?
couldn't say that my mother spoke in a Widnesian accent.
Oh, no.
They all spoke well, and they all enunciated clearly. That's the only reason that I always said. But I got told the tale that he was a manager at the United Alkali.
Well, it's something like that.
That's what I
It was at the, yes.
I
Well,
got told he was a manager at the United Alkali Works.
But look up lumper
Yes,
in
yes.
some of this industrial thing.
But I'm only sort of
Because I
saying...
don't know who told me that. I don't know who it was. I couldn't tell you that.
And I think it was my father who told me, because he could have been...
Well, where-
Oh,
did
my
they live?
grandma. Grandma Hunt had a sister, Aunt Et, and she lived at Peasley Cross. You know Peasley Cross, St Helens,
Mm.
and she had a pub there, and her name was Mrs Hall. Now you see two connections with St Helens there. Grandfather Morris was there, but I don't know anything more about that. Then her name was Hull, I think, not Hull.
Where-
Oh, I've heard, that's right, Hull.
Sissy Hull.
Sissy Hull.
And one of them
That's right.
went out to Sierra Leone,
Yeah.
one of Aunt's. So my grandma used to take me there. She used to say, I'll take you to Peasley Cross. And she used to say, I'll take you to Overton Hills. And Overton Hills were Frodsham.
Yes. Now, the
Excuse
other
me.
thing, Frost, while we're here, is about my father's family. Now, did Grandad have any brothers, Grandad Morris?
Oh, I don't know.
No, we don't seem to know much about them, and even the Morrises don't
I
seem to
can't
know.
remember the name of this place. He used to go, I've been with him to this big house. It was a lot bigger house
Yeah, he
than
said
we
that,
live in.
yes.
And he was a kid, I could sit.
But he used to go back to Peasley Cross.
Not Peasley
No,
Cross,
no.
in other parts of St Helens, I don't know which part.
Oh no, well according to the Morrises, that he died
Oh.
on Peasley Cross station. He'd been
He
on
died,
boxing.
I never heard it called Peasley Cross
Oh.
where he died. I know it was St
Well,
Helens.
they said
I meant
it
it
was
a strange
Peasley
thing that Jim Morris died in there.
Yes,
Yeah, we're talking about
we're
that.
talking about that coming, about your...
Where did they live before they bought the bakery then?
Oh, I couldn't tell you that.
Well, we've no idea about that.
But I couldn't tell you a thing about that, no.
We-
But I understand that she took this, because when she moved once, you know, I remember playing with scales in the yard. It was, you know, she went, at one time she went and lived opposite, you know, Aunt Hilda lived at the top of Belvoir Road.
Yes,
Well, she went and lived opposite,
yes.
in a new house. But I don't think that she could afford to live by herself, but I don't know. Because they got 7 and 6pence a week pension in those days,
Yes.
and I only remember these things from
And
the
she
years
spent
when I
all
was a
that
kid,
money
you
over all
know.
the years.
And I don't think she had any money.
The fact was that the Aunt Hilda lived with Grandma latterly and these beach boys, and they allowed them to destroy everything. They had
It's
this
true.
family day
It's true. When I was a child, and I used to
be.
be with Grandma, there was the family Bible, you see. Ethel tells me they nearly all had one in those days. And it always had these kids at the front that they'd got, you know. And she also had a lot of bound volumes of these Church of England magazine. It was called Home Notes. And in quite a lot of these bound volumes, there was the weddings, the marriages of her children in print, you see, in there. Because I can remember seeing those. And what
And a musical
she had
photograph album.
She had a photograph album that would be quite priceless now. You know, where you slip them sort of in the
That's right,
pages
in
and the little flowers all round. And I used to look at that. And that had this musical box. I don't know what it played, but I used to hear it play. Now, I remember a few years later, when I was much older, all those were in bits, torn up. You'd have wondered how they could have been destroyed. And that was what she said. It was those Beaches boys. They were vandals.
What?
And he was horrible.
He's still horrible. We're always trying
Oh.
to get rid of him. Harry Beach? Oh, you mean the old
I mean the old.
Oh, what?
What,
Well,
Hilda's husband?
Yes, he was terrible.
Oh, Harry
Well,
Beach, she said.
Old Harry Beach. But
Oh,
young
okay.
Harry Beach.
Young Harry Beach is all right,
Oh,
isn't he?
he's he's palmed himself on Ruth all these years and she can't get rid of him. He's as mean as...
She was married to Arthur Hunt, wasn't
Yes,
she?
she's...
And is he still going
Yes.
to Ruth? Well,
Yeah.
I don't see
Yeah.
how she couldn't get rid of him. She can lock the damn door, couldn't
Yeah,
she?
I don't know.
Well, I thought
But,
Harry Beach was all right.
Well, he's all
It's a bit
right,
stuffy.
But the old Harry Beach was awful. I mean,
They hated him. And you know, he was ill. He was a consumptive. He was, you know,
he died.
it was in certain families, you know. You must know that at the turn of the centuries they've wiped it out, haven't they?
Yes.
Well, a lot of they hadn't it in our family,
No.
but it was in the Beaches.
Yeah.
It was rife, and it was in the Bennets who lived on Mount Pleasant
That's
there.
right, yes.
And that. But Harry Beach, he must have been home from work one time, ill or something, or I don't know what, I can't remember it quite, but you know where the millfield was, and we come along the back there, and she lived at the top of one of those roads, didn't she? Now, I was a bit of a kid who was everybody's dog body. I was, to a certain extent. I don't mean just with mothers, because she wouldn't let me mind the baby. If I saw one, she said, I wouldn't let her take the child in the pram. And there's a wisdom behind that, because I once tipped a kid out.
She was very strict about that.
I once tipped a kid out of a pram. It was Jessie's in Manchester, it wasn't it? And, yeah, I did. And what was it? I always lose my thread.
About going across the top to
Yeah.
the dog's body.
Well, apparently the millfield was a sort of centre where they all gravitated, you can imagine. Because they used to sing in those days instead of watching the telly, and our doll and those could play the piano and they used to sing, you see. So it was a place where they often gravitated to till old Rice, you know, he went rotten, and they used to call him the old fella. She never called him anything else, our doll. The old fella, this. Well, I found myself as a small child walking along with Uncle Harry, that I called him, her husband, carrying a bucket of coal while he walked to the side of me. And not thinking anything about it now. He was, what shall I say? She must have borrowed a bucket of coal off Auntie Polly or something. It was a bucket. And I was carrying it. Well, when they found out, it was Uncle Bert and Walter. And I don't know, I let it go, but I didn't know it was a terrible thing. They hated him, you know. To let a child carry a bucket of coal. Now that's the kind
This is Harry Beach.
yeah, horrible.
But
And he used to be, he was so sarcastic, you know, sarcastic on kids.
of course, that was when I was about 15. He was the one who shouted at me to go upstairs. You know, pretending Matilda was there. Didn't hear that?
No, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, I went on a message once.
Upstairs, I'm gabbing away.
4:18 or
Yes,
4:12?
4:10.
Oh, well, it's nearly tea time. I better get this on.
I went one Saturday on a message from my mother. I was 14 and 15. Well, I was only 17 when my Uncle Bert died, wasn't it? So I was about 14, and you know, we always used to walk in and shouted, "Are you there, Auntie Hilda?" And this voice shouted, "We're upstairs," and it was him.
Don't tell me he attacked you.
Well, I went upstairs, and he was there lying in bed. And I just took him to my heels and run until there was nowhere to be seen. And so, of course, who do I go to? My Uncle Bert.
You know, you can't imagine how.
And he was furious, and he went over there, and he was very wrong. I said to him, "Do you know what's just happened?" Because I knew it was wrong. I knew
You
what
had an idea, yeah.
I didn't, sort of thing. But my Uncle Bert was absolutely furious. But the tale my Uncle Bert always used to tell is the tale.
Oh, he hated him like
Yes,
boys.
but not so much about Harry Beach. This is about Auntie Floss here, sat here, was that my mother and never left her children.
Oh, this is a good one. I can remember it myself.
Tell it then.
No, go on, you tell that one. I'd like to hear your version.
And but she used to get me Auntie Polly half a pound of bacon on a Saturday or Friday. I can't remember
Who
if it was
told you
Friday or
this tale?
Saturday.
Oh, good.
So he thought it. So the fact was that my father used to take it across when he went for a drink. We were just across the bank. And she used to have this habit of shouting downstairs, "I want a drink of water, Mama, I want a drink of water."
Right. And our Bill would go, "Want a pimp of pauper, want a pimp of pauper." Yeah.
So everything had gone quiet for quite a while. My father had forgotten this day. And my mother, worrying like I was, a proper worry got. She didn't tell you this because he used to go on about walking along the landing in the morning to waken him up.
Do what?
My mother, I'll tell you about that later. She's worrying about this bacon, and not having a bacon for the morning. She thought, "Oh, well, nobody shouted down for a while, and so I can just perhaps nip across the bank and take this." However, no sooner had she nipped across the bank, and it had, then this one shouted down, "Mama, I want a drink of water." No answer, no answer. So what does she do? But she comes down and finds no Mama there. Goes and gets the other two out of bed, stands on a chair and lifts the latch. Wait a minute.
Sits our Hilda on my knee
Wait a minute.
and slides from step to step. And then I go to the door. Go on with
Yes,
that.
yes. I didn't know
I
she
remember
did.
doing
Yes,
it, I did.
Yes, yes. Then she got a chair and stood on the chair and opened the back door, you know, the latch. And in the night clothes, and
Yeah.
it had been pouring with rain, and it was
Absolutely
all
true.
slutchy, this field.
It's absolutely true.
She trailed her and these two younger ones across this bank because she knew that if the mother had gone anywhere, it was 20
You
dollars.
see, and it was diagonally across this
And
bank.
a man walks into the pub and says, "Florrie, I've just seen your 3 children coming across the field in their night
True.
clothes." And my Uncle Bert went out and found them, and he picked them all up. I think he picked the 3 of you up, didn't he? And my mother came out quickly, and they all went back, and my Uncle Bert gave them whiskey and water.
That's right. And I can remember
Stop them catching cold.
it. I can remember it. I must have been, if I sat our Hilda on my knee, she must have been about 2 and I was 3.5 years older than her. I'd be 5,
Yes.
because I wouldn't have been in that house. I was 5, yes. Well, we used to call down, I want a drink of water, I want a drink of water, you see, and nothing happened. This is right, it was that. And so I thought that's fun. I don't know what I thought, but anyway, I came down the stairs. I must have wakened the others, but I could have all have been awake. And I slid from stair to stair, and I might say they were wooden stairs with no carpet on them.
Yes.
Because they weren't visible, you know.
There were those back stairs,
And
you
they
know.
had, and they had a turn on them.
Yeah.
And then I got a stool and opened the front door. You see, it was up there. And then the 3 of us. And I can remember to this day the slutch that we used to call it, you know. Slutch on this bank, we used to call
It
it.
was a clay bank.
It's built in now, isn't
Yes,
it? All
yes.
built. It was all open, you see, up to that, from our corner house to that long street with Antipolis is at the top.
Yes, it was Joseph
And I
Street.
can remember
And
But
it
put
was
in-
crossed like that, you see.
putting my bare feet on the sludge. But I knew where I was going. I was going to the mill field because I knew she wasn't there. You know, she was there.
Only place.
Anyway, I can't remember Uncle Bert, but I remember next now sitting on the table. They lifted us onto a table. He must have seen it. And Auntie Emma, his first wife,
That's right.
was alive then. And I remember Auntie Emma saying to me, "You'll come to your Auntie Emma's next time, won't you?" I remember that, you see. So it was, my mother, you see, was so upset because she didn't ever leave us, but you don't leave kids for a minute, you know.
No. What was Emma's maiden name? You don't remember?
Bell,
Oh.
Emma Bell.
Because, do you know that Harold Hunt, they didn't know anything about their father being married before?
And she
Of
never,
course.
I never mentioned
So I sort of said, you know, did you ever know? Because so the thing you ought to know, it's part of you.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And he said, well, I never knew that, Marjorie.
What
Never
did she die
knew.
of?
She
Well,
died
she
of
was one of the
TB.
families that was TBing. And she
two
had it, and so
children.
had the 2 kids. And Jackie was in that TB in Heswell. I think it's still there. Heswell, you know,
In the world.
the Wirral. Jackie was there, and he was lame. It was in his bones or something.
His name was
But
John.
Auntie,
John,
so Uncle Bert became a widower without his wife and 2 children, and we were a very closely knit family
Yeah.
all the time. And he went to live with our doll in Neil Street,
That's right.
you know.
Yeah.
And he lived with our doll, and I half lived there too, because it was my 2nd year at the grammar school,
Yeah.
and I was very useful to stay in at night with Dorothy while they went and helped in the pub. So there was me again, you see. I half lived there at one time. Used to come home for dinner, but I half lived
I
there.
remember our Don living in Neil Street.
And, yes, that's quite true, but listen, let me tell you the sequence to it. Comes another night, and I'm in bed. This is true as well. Calling out, "I want a drink of water, I want a drink of water." No answer, no answer. "I want a drink of water," the same old time. So I crept downstairs. She was sitting there waiting for me. Did you ever know this? She was like this. She was waiting for me, and I got on her. I can't never forget it. And I got on a level with her. She said, "You little madam, get back up those stairs." But wasn't it being funny for her? Feeling me caught. But the same thing was going to happen. But I think I was going to go on myself that time. I don't know. But if she couldn't answer me, she wasn't there. So I came down, and by God, I got back quicker up those stairs than I got down. Because, of course, she was very annoyed about it and upset because it looked as though she left the kids.
But she never did, you see.
As I was saying, when our Bill and I used to climb up and get our toffee clubs, they must have been out then or just gone out. We'd be older, you see, if we could do that. But they wouldn't want us to be climbing up on the chairs, you see. I know Dan, when he was meddling with his old car in the old days, when we had Julie, you know, he was fiddling with it one day and he got it going and he says to me, "Come on, we'll just go. I want to try it out, you see." He says, "Well, just come up to the bridge." And we left Julie, you know. She'd come downstairs and was starting poking the fire. And we got back. Oh no, she'd look for some biscuits
No, you
as
think
well.
they're in bed, you see, and they're fast asleep. You can't afford to leave them. But the other tale about her that my father used to tell me.
Oh, is that one about him putting me under the tap?
Yes.
Oh, well, I can't remember that. No, I was too young.
Well, you're only about 18 months old.
I think it was a bit more than that, but I only know that from their tale, but this one about going across the
Yes,
background.
you remember. Yeah, you know the tale.
Yes.
Well,
You'd be fed up,
he
Ross.
took her to something. He took her to a...
I'll tell you what it was, you'll die.
it
They
was
tell me, I
coronation
didn't
something.
remember. They tell me it was when King Edward VII died, and it was all about his funeral in Town Hall Square.
You know, people had to go to the town
So
hall
you see,
square,
I was
you
born
see.
in 1907, and King
Yeah.
George acceded in 1911.
Yes.
So really, it would be a bit of, I can't remember that.
She'd be about 3.
Mm.
And she said she was
There's no wireless, you see, or television now.
she said she was hungry, you see. And,
Oh, yeah.
he took her to his mother's, which was in Gladstone Street, which wasn't far from the town hall, you see. And when he got her there, it wasn't that you were hungry, you wanted to go to the toilet.
No, his mother said I was hungry.
Yes,
that was
that's
all.
right.
I don't know.
Yes,
I don't know.
she wanted to go to the toilet or something. And anyway, she misbehaved when she got there.
Oh yes, I was a yeller. You
She
see.
was throwing this tantrum, you see. And Grandma said, it's because he's hungry. He said, hungry with bugger. She's not hungry. He said, she's just a bad-tempered little thing. And he got her and put her head under the cold water tap.
Yes, well, I think
See.
that was the thing that they did, but it was a horrible thing,
Yes,
wasn't it?
yes, it was a horrible thing. It was a
Like
horrible
throwing a girl out
Yes.
because she's pregnant.
It was
It's
a
thing to
terrible
do.
thing, you see. And when he brought her from under it, she was such a madam that she said, do it again, Dad, or I like it.
Oh well, yes, but I've heard that too. But I mean, that's not one that I really remember.
No, well, you don't.
Come on, let Ross tell us something about it.
Well, do you
Maybe
want Ross
boring
tell
him.
you something? Well,
He's a very good husband and father, and not much more beside that.
Yeah, what about this not wanting to go to
Well, I
work?
don't think he did. I don't think he. I don't. Well, I don't think he was very keen on work. It was bloody hard work. At one time, old Rice at the Millfield said to a fellow in the bar, by the way, when I heard about Charlie Chaplin, I thought he was one of the fellas in the bar. So you know how much we were in pubs. And I heard him say to this fellow in the bar, "Her father is labouring." Like that. Well, I didn't know what the hell he meant. I only know it years after. So that jobs became so scarce. My father couldn't keep, as our Marjorie said, he used to be so handy and he would tell people off.
yeah.
You see, he wouldn't knuckle down, and then he's perhaps the one that was sacked. Although
He'd be sacked the first,
you
you
see, his job, that job of moulding that they had, Uncle Bert. Now this is interesting. Uncle Bert was also a moulder, and at the same, they were just like my father's 2 brothers. His brother was a fitter, and he was a moulder, and his father was a fitter too, an engineer. You know, he had a certificate on his wall and all that, grandfather. And it just so happened the mother's 2 brothers were the same. Uncle Bert couldn't stand being a moulder because he couldn't stand the worry of his mould overnight. Now my father was never a worrier. So what did Uncle Bert do? He went in, he was an electrician, but he wasn't before that.
No, he went.
So my father might be out of work. Now that was the trouble. Out of work through no fault of his own. But there's nothing going much like this now. One of the ladies here that comes cleaning, she's married for a second husband, very nice fellow, and he's a steel erector. And he's been doing, what's that thing they're doing in London? You must know, a big bridge or tunnel or something.
Don't know.
Channel to...
Oh, the channel.
No, it wasn't the channel. I think it's that. It's one that's well known, and she used to go. She's been going at weekends to see him, you see, and the rest of it. And it's been nice for her. And I said to her the other day, her name's Davina actually. I said, have you been to London lately, Davina? And I'm talking about now, of course, the present. And she says, no, I haven't been. She said, he's out of work, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
You see.
Well, my father did everything to earn money. It's all right, but he was a good farmer and a good husband. The fact is, there were the very few men in those days who did things. But my father always cooked the Sunday dinner, and he always did the Christmas dinner.
Well, I
didn't
wouldn't
he?
say always, but
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
to sum him up, he was a very good father. No doubt about that.
There's no.
But Mother had more influence on us, you know, I think.
Well,
I don't know. I look back on it and I think, well, I wasn't the only one, but I had many a time, and you must know the same, I had them to myself. I had my father to myself many a night. I would
That's
say
right.
to him,
Yes.
I would say to him, will you read that bit out of Shakespeare? And I'll tell you who said it, you know, learning the context.
And the other thing is that they were good. Well, it's
They
the
were,
same
they
thing.
were wonderful parents.
That, I mean, you meet people today who didn't know as much as we did. My father was a very well-educated, self-educated man. He read a lot. And when I did my first course in the Open University, it was talking about utilitarianism. Our philosopher will remember all this.
I don't much. What's that?
Well, and all these names.
There's quite a difference in those days of what you could do with 18 shillings and what you could do with 25. Because eggs would be about 24 for a shilling.
Well, it's 2/3 compared to...
Yes, well that was what Mother told me that. So when they first got married and he was in his work, and I understand he was it's an art, you know.
Yeah.
I've been with Veg Platt round their factory. And I also went from school to see the moulding shop, and big buckets of molten iron come over and they to pour them in these moulds, and then they had pattern makers, you know. I didn't know what that meant at one time, but it means making a pattern for the mould. And Alan Nixon was one of those. I believe they made a wooden pattern. It's skilled. You see, well, when things were going fine, my father had these jobs. They were easy, not easy for him, but I mean, the money was enough. Comfortable is the word I wanted. But of course, then as time went on, you know yourself about this in and out. We've seen it ourselves, you've seen it in your life, haven't you? First it's up and then it's down. And so that he did suffer from unemployment, and as I told you, I heard that remark passed by old wives. Her father's labouring, didn't know what it meant, but it comes to you, doesn't it, later years. So he did all sorts of jobs. He had to do.
He went steel erecting, he went working on bricks.
Yes, he worked away.
So why did the lads feel that way?
Well, I don't know.
Because he was, well, I'll tell you why. Because he was very strict with them, and he used to get in those days. He used to get the strap out.
Oh yes, he did. Because Harold tells a tale about 3 of them being in bed,
Yes.
and I'm the only one that got the clouts
because he was
because
in
the
the
other two, and things like that. But they didn't seem to. No, I wouldn't say that they looked up to it.
And he didn't like them smoking, so he wouldn't let them smoke in the house.
And he was a picker. He picked, like I told you behind his nose.
And he also, in those days we had the radio, and he was a great opera brass band fan, and he wouldn't let them have programmes on. And they were young men.
I don't, but they used to grumble about his programme, isn't it?
Yeah, they wouldn't have it Mar on.
A brass band again or something like that.
right.
He didn't have all his own way by any means.
But
Unless they grew up. Of course, we're talking about different periods. But look, I mean, our Don was very good to him late in life.
Yes.
All he had to do was, he was on a good thing, wasn't he, when he used to go and see Anne? And he'd drop off the bus at our Don's door, and our Don would take him to meet the other two, and they'd have a drink, you know. But they didn't have there was a bit of a different attitude.
Oh, Harold was the only one who felt that way.
I
think there's always
the other two
I
did.
think
He was rather nasty.
and sons
Yes.
and daughters, and, you know.
You see,
it's a different thing.
Harold had a chip on his shoulder right from school. He had his eye had the birthmark, and then when he came out of school, he knew he was superior to those two, but they had jobs, and he was the only one who didn't. And as I've told you before, Harold.
He hadn't got a
He
job.
never had a job from the time he was 14. You remember that? He had to. He came out at the worst time, and the first job he got was at the Everite when he and he always had to be beholden to all these to
I
give him
didn't know
money
that.
to
You
go
see,
to
you
the
lived there.
pictures,
I'd gone then.
you see. And well, it wasn't that you didn't live there. It was that you were teaching at the time. You were mostly in the front room.
Oh yes. Mm.
You see,
So I didn't hear what was going on.
So that's you know she didn't sort of know what was
But
going on.
I was been married for 17 years when Mother died. 17 years.
Yeah, no, but our Harold's only 9 years younger than you. If he was living now, he'd be...
He was only 5 years younger.
5 years.
Mm.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Mm.
So it was, you know, he was still a young
He
fellow
must be
then.
more than 5 years young.